what do you need to do before you really decide to sell the company? What are the key things you need to decide? You need to talk to your stakeholders, your family, you need to talk to your employees, your key employees, you need to talk to your suppliers and everybody else, and decide these things. The first thing is, what is your valuation? What are you looking for? It's very important for you to decide with your shareholders, what is the minimum I want? Because you can waste a lot of time, everybody's time, by not deciding what you want, because at the end of the day, everybody will try and negotiate you down to a price. And so it's important for you to think, what is the minimum price I'm willing to sell at? You don't have to tell them that. You can obviously tell them a higher price, but you should beforehand agree with your shareholders what your minimum price is. Then you don't have to go back to your shareholders and say, look, this is the price we have got. Do you want to sell? Because you already know that, yes, you've got permission from your shareholders to sell at a certain price. So try and come up with a target price and understand what your range is, what your target is in terms of what you want and what the minimum is. Timing. Try and figure out when you want to sell. You may have cash flow constraints. You've got to sell by a certain time, otherwise you're going to run out of money. Or the market might be really hot, and therefore we've got to sell before the Trump comes into power in January, because the market's going to be ruined by then. So let's sell quickly. So decide what the timing is, whether you want to take your time in no particular hurry, in which case you can spend a little bit more time, but that's quite inefficient because you're always having to keep your house clean. Or do you want to do it quickly? Get it over and done with. We've decided to sell, let's try and sell it in 6 months or 12 months and get it done. Okay, but that's something which is very important for you to decide up front. The next thing is, what type of partner do you want? What kind of buyer do you want to work with? Do you want a strategic investor? Do you want a financial investor? Do you want to sell 100%? Do you want to sell a minority? Do you want new capital to come into the business? You need to decide what your objective is to sell. If you're a little bit older and you want to retire quickly, then you want to sell 100%. But if your business is still growing pretty quickly and you're still quite young, then maybe you want a minority investor to grow the business together. So that's something you should also decide. The structure, I just mentioned minority, majority. How much do you want to have at the end of the day, or do you want to get out completely? These are all things you need to decide. And then legal commercial issues. What do I have to clean up? I know that I've got a lawsuit against us. I better sort that out first before I start trying to sell. I know that this property is non-core, so I should probably sell that first, or separate it, or maybe the subsidiary I want to keep. I want to move away from my existing business and I want to sell my non-core business, or I want to do something else, in which case you should probably clean that up first before you actually sell what you want to sell. So these are all things which you should think about before you actually enter into the actual M&A process. And then personally, this is also important if you're the owner of the company. What does it mean for you? What do you want to do? Do you want to retire? Do you want to stay with the business? Do you want to look after your employees who've been working with you for the last 20 years? Do you want to stay in a transition period for 6 or 12 months? Do I want to be an advisor of the business, or am I happy to let it go completely? Depending on where you are, if you want to let it go completely, you've got to make sure that the seller is a good seller. So the buyer is a good buyer, and he's going to look after your employees and look after your customers in the way you did when you owned the business. So the other one is the impact on employees. Obviously, the employees will stay, most of them, so you have to look after them. And then finally, life after sale. What's next for you? Hopefully, you made a lot of money out of the sale. So now what am I going to do with this money? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? Tax consequences as well. You may end up with a significant amount of money, which you could have saved some tax if you had moved to a different jurisdiction, or if you had structured in a different way. So these are things you should think about before you decide to sell, because it may be too late by the time you sell, and then suddenly you have a big check which comes into your bank account, and then the taxman says, oh, this is really good. You could have avoided that by a little bit of structure as well. So think about that as well, because that's important. And then after you've got the money in your bank account, what are you going to do with it? You should probably speak to a private bank or a wealth manager who might be able to manage your money after that. Some people end up with money and they say, well, now what am I going to do? The original business paid nice dividends, now the cash in the bank is doing nothing. So think about that before you decide. Now, what are the steps? There's a few steps. First of all, as we mentioned, set clear objectives as to what you want to achieve, all of the things I mentioned, and agree that with your stakeholders. So the next one is, once you've figured out all of the answers to the previous slide, agree that with your stakeholders, with your family, with your employees, key employees, with everybody else who has a say in the business, and make sure that they are happy with that, and then they will go along with it. You don't want to sell your business and then all the employees disappear, or all of your customers disappear. Make sure you prepare well, so clean everything up before you start to sell, otherwise you'll be too busy afterwards. You don't want to start cleaning up while you're talking to investors. And then engage the right advisors. Make sure that you find a good advisor who understands your business and really is passionate about your business, can see the good points and is willing to sell with passion because they're your representative. And make sure that they have a good network of potential investors as well. And then finally, plan for your life after you sell the business.